If you're a yoga teacher, you have likely experienced that moment where you just feel like giving up, throwing in the towel, and just completely quitting. And maybe you already have done that. And if you haven't experienced that, there's a good chance that you will. So in this episode, I'm going to share my story of those moments where I was completely back against the wall and I wanted to quit, and what I did to pivot and just change the trajectory of my teaching journey. So if that sounds like something that could be encouraging and empowering for you as you take your next steps, grab a drink, grab a comfy chair, and come chat with us.
Welcome back to the Jesus Coffee Yoga podcast. And if this is your first time, welcome to the show where we help you as a yoga teacher take your business further and create the business and the life that you love that supports you in the life that you want to live. So if that's you and your first time here and love what we're putting out, make sure you subscribe so you catch all of our future episodes. Well, hello, Kristen.
Cheers. Cheers. Welcome to Jesus Coffee Yoga, where we talk about coffee first, right? Jesus always, coffee first. What are you drinking today? Your fancy schmancy coffee.
All right. So today we are bringing the snobbery level way, way down.
Okay. Like
So we
Folgers
have,
down?
not that low. That's emergency status. When there's emergency caffeine need, and that's all that's available, or like gas station coffee, just ugh. But no, we get pre-ground coffee, which it's kind of a sin in the snobbery world because like that's where all the freshness and flavor lives, is when you grind it, like keep it as fresh as possible. But we do get a pre-ground bag of coffee for those moments where like we don't have time. I don't have time to do a pour over, or I just don't want to, or maybe I ran out of beans. So it's kind of like our backup. And so my wife made some coffee this morning, and rather than wasting it, I'm like, I'll just drink some of that. So it's Starbucks, but again, the snobbery level here, like Starbucks is kind of like it for me. That's my gas station. Like if we're traveling, I won't drink anything unless it's like, oh, I guess we'll do Starbucks. But they over roast everything so that it's all just like burnt. And that way, when all you non-snobs are like adding all your sugary, nasty stuff, which by the way, you should probably stop doing that. That's like diabetes in a cup right there.
Diabetes in a cup.
So that you can still taste some of the flavor. I think that they do that on purpose and to make it consistent across all their different branches and people or whatever. It's like, let's just burn it all the time so it tastes the same.
You're actually not wrong. I'm sorry to all of you Starbucks drinkers listening to this, but you're actually not wrong. Like I used to drink all the sugary drinks and I loved them. They were delicious. But then once I started drinking more coffee more seriously, I agree. Like it all just tastes really like over roasted or something, or like overcooked. And so I don't disagree. You're probably going to make fun of me for what's in my cup. It's like a coffee alternative. And this is like my second month drinking it. I drink one every day, but it's like mushroom coffee. I don't know if you guys have heard of this or not. It does not taste like coffee at all. But there's like 7 different mushrooms. There's a ton of benefits in it, and I actually really like it and have noticed some benefits. And it's got like 50 grams of caffeine. So there's a little bit of caffeine in there. But if you can just get over the fact that it's not coffee, which, I haven't been drinking coffee anyways, but I just drink it like it's just a hot supplement, essentially. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I use that a little bit. Is it the Four Sigmatic one or is it a different brand?
The one I have is Rise. It's like RYZE, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's several of them out there. So I do use those as well. And a lot of benefits to mushrooms. They call it adaptogens. There's different ones that do different things. And
a lot of people put it in their coffee. And because I don't drink coffee, I just drink it by itself. And I told the kids yesterday, I'm like, I really do just have adapted to the taste of it. Like it's not coffee, but it's not bad either. So you kind of just get used to the taste of it.
Yeah, lower your expectation. Just don't expect coffee. I think
don't expect coffee. Don't expect coffee, but the benefits really are great. So I'm gonna keep drinking it.
It's like people that are trying to come off of soda or pop or whatever you call it where you live, and you try LaCroix. If you drink a LaCroix thinking it's going to taste like Sprite, you are going to be sorely disappointed.
Oh, it's so true. But we now drink sparkling water all the time. Like I buy a couple packs each week, and none of us drink soda on a regular basis anyway. Some of the kids will, but I'm like, it's true. If you just get used to it. And our bodies are amazing. They can adapt to pretty much anything. I told the kids, like, your body will literally just adapt to what you're eating or drinking. So it's okay if you don't like it right now. Just keep eating it. Keep drinking it. So anyways, that's what we've got going on in my cup over here.
Nice. Well, We should get into it. I'm really looking forward to hearing more of your story. Of course, I've heard it multiple times, but every time I hear it, it reinvigorates, some, like, determination and grit, and, like, kinda makes me emotional too sometimes, just playing a part in that and being involved in your story and thinking through the lives that have been changed because you didn't throw in the towel, because you kept at it, and how different things could have turned out had you done that. And if you haven't heard her story, why don't you go back to episode 0, which is, like, the very first one we put out, is more about our story and kind of where we got started and all of that. We kinda skimmed over a lot of the details of this part, and that's what we're gonna talk about. But if you want a little bit more backstory, you can go to that episode. So to kinda get us up to this point was when you had moved to a new town, and we'd closed our physical studio here in Tulsa, and you were just trying to start over and build things on your own. So kinda paint the picture of, like, where were you at when this was going on?
Yeah, well, and as you what you were saying earlier of the things that have come through, the not quitting or the intentional pivoting and things like innovation, like you guys that are listening to this podcast right now, like CDY was born from like what do they say?
Constraint?
Restraints cause innovation. Is that
Con
right? Like
con
restriction,
constraint.
constraints. Innovation is born out of constraints. And that's kind of where we were because yeah, we had been teaching. We had a pretty thriving studio. I was a new yoga teacher, had never run any business other than my hair business. Definitely hadn't worked with other leaders and team members. And we were doing really well. And God called us out of that space pretty abruptly, like within 6 weeks from the time that we heard this was going to happen to the time we actually lived in this new place. It was really, really quick. And so we, like we had mentioned in our other episode, we did keep the studio going as much as we could, but it was so hard not being there in the day to day. We made the decision, I believe, like in the summer of 2017, to close the doors. And then we started kind of pouring more energy into CDY and just kind of like what, like just seeing what's here, right? Like, and then I had to start all over. Like I'm in a new town with all new people. Like when I moved here, I knew one person, the person that helped, invite us here and get us here and all of that. But other than that, like I knew nobody. So once I got here, I don't know, those of you that live in small town, like small town, like I think when we moved here, there were about 6 to 7,000 people. I think it's higher now, but I don't know if you've lived in a small town, but like everybody knows everybody and everybody knows everybody's business. And when you're not everybody and you come flying in on a unicorn into a town you've never been to, like that's exactly what people feel like. It's like, who is this person? What are they doing? What's going on? Like, and now that I've been here for, I guess we're right up on 7 years. Is that right? Yeah. Like now that I'm here, I'm like, I get it. I understand. Like when we get new people, I understand from a different perspective. But so I just started teaching at a park. We were involved in our church. That's what brought us here. And so I connected with some women from the church and just, me being naive me, I'm just like so excited. I'm like, because we were doing so well in Tulsa and Tulsa had a great community of Christian yoga teachers and students. Like it was just, everybody knew about it. And like, it was just normal. Right. Well, it was not normal here, Christian yoga or yoga in general. And it was actually, in fact, I learned later, very looked down upon. So I started gathering women. I'm like all excited. And, I'm just kind of taking that same energy from the studio to here. And I've connected with a couple of people. I'm just doing yoga in a park because I don't know anywhere. We lived in a 1-bedroom loft, like cabin for the first like 5 or 6 months that we lived here. So like, I didn't know anything, didn't know anybody, didn't have any connections. And from kind of that summer to the fall, I was just teaching, kind of just finding new people and putting my stuff out there and just being super excited. Somewhere in the fall, it like some conversations happened because of our involvement with the church and then my involvement with yoga and my business and things like that. It became a very high point of tension to the point where like I just was like, is it even worth it? Because at this point I'm teaching like one class a week because that's all I have the people for. I had like 6 or 7 people that were kind of regular. And I was just charging like, I think $5 or $7 a class, and just to like get people in. And I was getting so much kickback from not only, some of the leadership in our church at the time, but the community as a whole. We're like, hold on, like, who's this devil worshiper coming in here trying to teach people how to move and breathe, right? And so it just became too much with our move, with the loss of the studio, just a lot of grief. We had even lost a child, a pregnancy in that time. And so like all of it just became too much. And around November of that same year, 2017, I had made the decision. I'm like, I'm done. I'm done. Like, I am not making enough money to continue to do this as a profession, like to bring income to my family. I had other trades that I could do. So I just kind of made the decision. I'm just going to be done with this for now. Like, if we do stuff online, cool, but I'm just going to be done with this being the thing that I do. And I'll go back to working my traditional jobs that I've done before. And it was towards the end of November. I remember because it was around the holidays. A girl that I had connected with through church, which was interesting because she didn't even come to our church at the time. I think she had just visited, came up to me, and she had taken a class when I first got here of just a faith-based class. And what I didn't know at the time was that when she came up to me I remember I was at the back of the auditorium at church, and she just gives me this big hug and she said, "Are you going to be teaching any more Christian yoga classes?" And I was like, "I don't know." Like, I just told her, like, "I don't know." And she then proceeds to tell me her story. She said, "When I met you," and I knew who she was, but we didn't have like a relationship at this time. She said, "When I met you, I had just lost a pregnancy. I think she was around 6 months pregnant, and she like had delivered the baby and everything." And she said, "I had come to some of those classes and they helped me so much. So I'm wondering if you are going to be doing any more." And so I, like, with just a sharpness that I wouldn't normally have, I just said, "Here's the deal. You know a lot more people than I do. So if you can get 5 of your friends to come to I'll do a 4-part series, next month we'll do a 4-part series. If you will share this information, get 5 of your friends to come, you can come for free. That'll make it worth my time, and I will offer this to you." And so I did. I set up this 4-part series. She started sharing it like on social media and just texting her friends, and 36 people showed up. Like, I didn't even know 36 people at that time, like not very well anyways. 36 people showed up because of the power of her story. And she shared how it helped her and how, um, you know, like what it did for her, the benefits in her body and her mind and her heart. But I put it in her hands and said, "If you will do this, then I can meet you here." And so this was a huge light bulb moment for me. It was a moment where I completely wanted to quit. And instead, I felt like God led me to just learn what it means to pivot. And I've done this twice in my business, and I'm going to share both times with you what it looks like to pivot. So I knew at that time, the way that I wanted to offer classes was not just every Tuesday at 7:00 for the rest of my life. Like, I didn't want to do like the membership or the punch cards and all of that. And there's a place for that in your business, depending on your vision. But that for me, like, this is what it was, because I want to have like this, what is it called? Like a call and response. So what she shared with me is what she needed. I went to God and said, "What can I bring your people?" Or like, she's hurting. She's sharing her story. Obviously other people need something in this. So what is it? And so that's when I made my first series. It was a 4-part series that we actually have in like our CDY shop. It's called Made New. And we did it at the front of the year. It was head, heart, health, and habits. Each week we discussed biblical truths around it. We had a playlist, like kind of themed around that. And then of course we had a little bit of like journaling activity and things like that. But that was my very first series that I created, intentionally focused on something to meet the needs of what I felt like people were wanting. And that truly set the trajectory of my business. I learned really quick, this is what works. This is what people that I'm called to reach want. And I learned so much in that. And I started making money. Like I wasn't even charging a whole lot for the series. It was something really inexpensive, like $35 for all four classes. And then if you times that by 36, like that's a pretty good chunk for somebody who was about to quit. like and hasn't been, I hadn't been making money doing that. And so that was really the onset of my business taking off after just struggling to even stay like eyeballs above water, and not even just in a business sense, but in a purpose sense. Cause I was like, okay, God, knowing where you brought me from, how did I get here? How did I get to a place where I'm like passionate and on fire about doing this work and like building myself as a leader and building other leaders and doing all this to, I just want to quit because it's not working. Like people hate me here because of what I do, and hate's a strong word. They didn't hate me, but like I'm very disliked because of the work I do. But it also showed me the power of an invite. It showed me the power of me not trying to do it all on my own. Like sometimes the most powerful marketing is allowing other people to take it in their hands and toss it out to their people. So just the power of inviting. So, anyways, and then of course I learned how to make a series. So those were some things that I learned through that very first like wall that I found myself against, and that place where I really saw innovation come to life through what I was currently trying to do, which wasn't working.
There's something you said in there. I don't want to make everybody wait, till the end. A couple things I want to point out. If you didn't catch it, when you're just teaching drop-ins, and I don't mean just to make you feel bad, but if that's the only thing you're doing, you're doing drop-ins and just charge a small rate. Because a lot of times when you start out, like there's a place for that. There's a place for donation base. And if it's a ministry and you don't need money or want money from this, honestly, if you can honestly say that, like no shame, like that's great. That's what you're called to do. I'm not talking to you in this moment. Most of you, I would say, need or want to make some money from this. If you're being really honest with yourself, sometimes I think we are dishonest with ourselves because like we do want to make money, but we're not supposed to want money. And we kind of get a little mixed up with that. And I think we need to do some episodes on like money mindset
Mhm.
stuff. But if you're doing it that way, if you're just doing donation based or charging a really low rate because you're afraid, it's usually what it comes down to. You're afraid of charging more and thinking people will go away. Uh, you're not going to make a whole lot of money. And again, in the beginning, that's okay because you're getting reps, you're getting better, you're developing your craft. But at some point, you're good enough to charge more. Like you need to start charging what you're worth. You've put in a lot of effort, a lot of time, and a lot of money to get certified and get
Yeah.
to where you are. So just notice the dollar amount. Let's say even if you had 35 people show up for just a cheap drop in or donation based, you might make $100. I don't know. It's not a whole lot, but 36 people times 35 is $1,260 and that's for four. So if you divide that by four, that's whatever, like that's a lot per session. And so we're going to plug series quite a bit here because it was very powerful and it works. It's very effective for a multitude of reasons. And maybe we do another episode just on series to kind of talk through it. But just think of those numbers. One, you've got uh, the next 4 weeks, people are going to come. And if they don't, they've already paid for it. So like you're earning the money whether they flake out on you or not. But usually people are much more committed because they've invested in it and they're going to show up. And also, it keeps things fun and spicy. It's not just another class. It's not just another same old vinyasa. Like it's something special to make it an experience and to really, I don't know, just do something special. So very, very powerful tools, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. But something else that you had said too, that you might be on the verge of quitting because of the financial part. You're just not making enough money for it to be worth it, and you need to figure something else out. But you may also be fine financially. You might have put yourself in a position where the passion is gone. So you had said something about that, about just having that lack of passion and drive and like purpose. And so it might not just be the money. So there might be indicators that if you're not already there, that you're headed down this path, these feelings of apathy, or like maybe the money is fine, maybe you're even doing great, but you're really lacking this fulfillment and purpose. That's a good signal that something is amiss and it's time to course correct before it gets worse.
Yeah, that's really good. And honestly, like just as a leader, it gave me confidence. And as a Jesus follower, it gave me confidence. So it reminded me that like God like tells us like, if you'll give it to me, I will do something with it. Right. And it really sharpened my own faith in that moment, that moment of connection could turn into something so awesome. And it, again, it was just the trajectory of my whole business and career here in town was changed significantly from that. So it built my confidence in God, and then I also just built my confidence in myself as a leader and how to now nurture these relationships. And like you said, like keep it fun and fresh. Like that's the beauty of getting to work for yourself. Like that's the beauty of like that's what I loved about hair being a hairstylist is like it wasn't always the same exact haircut on the same exact person every single day. Like that would be really, really boring. And so just getting to, freshen it up, switch times, switch days, switch types of classes, playlist, and all of that. And just revive that part of your practice. I think that's a really good point to point out that even if it's not about the money side of things, pay attention to that passion.
So then what happened? You launched this series, you kind of felt this revitalization. Like take us to the next stage of like where did things go from there? How did it build?
Yeah. So from there, through this one person, I got a connection with a space where I was like, and I need a space. She's like, well, I can connect you. And so I started teaching out of the space, which is actually it's still the same sweet little space that we use for our YouTube and virtual studio and all of that. So I get connected with them and I start leading. I did this series and then I started leading. I just offered a Wednesday class at 9 o'clock for almost a year. That was the only thing I taught other than series. So I would do a Wednesday 9 a.m. and then I would change what days I was doing these different series. So we did our Made New series. We did an oil and yoga. We called it Joy. It was Jesus, oil, and yoga. People really love that, by the way. Like my clients and students love anything with oils. We did, an intro to power series. We've done a inversion and like arm balance series. So like it just got me excited about like, so now I have these people to pull, right? And say, hey, what do you like? What do you want to do? What do you want to try? What kind of music do you like? And they just kind of helped me grow as a leader. And we kind of all just grew together. But I had that one 9 a.m. class that I was teaching. And eventually that one 9 a.m. class got so full that we decided to open up a Friday class. So I was teaching Wednesday and Friday. And then I was still doing a series, but maybe spacing them out a little bit more. So instead of trying to do like one per month, it was like maybe a 4 or 5 week series, take a couple weeks off, and then come back and do a spring series or a fall series, whatever. And so it just gave me information, like an opportunity to connect with my students and put some staple classes on the schedule. So from there, I then realized, okay, these people aren't going anywhere. So let's just offer a membership. And that's when I switched to membership. So they could get, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think it was like they could get Wednesday and Friday for $99 a month. So that's what, like 8 to 9 classes a month, or my drop-ins. So that's when I went ahead and increased my rates because I looked at about, okay, now I've got a consistent crew of about 12 to 15 people. What do I need to make this worth it? So I gave them the option. So I increased my prices to make it what I needed it to be. So I think our drop-ins went to like $13. And then I offered monthly for $99. If they did auto draft, I gave it to them for $89. So just incentivizing that to come in every, that is way easier for my brain in accounting. But so we did that and we were thriving. We did that. And then I would still do series. So I would do, instead of like shorter series, I was now doing like a summer series. So we had Wednesday and Friday at 9 a.m., just like usual, right? So that's your $99. Then I would offer a summer series, and that was like my hot yoga series. And so that was 10 weeks. So it was through the summer and it was at night. It was Thursday night. That one blew up also. Like people love them some hot yoga, apparently. I mean, Nick, you've seen that big room that we're in. I don't have an idea of how big it is, but it was like wall to wall full. Like we're talking like 50 people in there at one time for hot yoga on Thursdays. I mean, It was awesome. So now, and so what I did with my members is I offered them discounts on series. Hey, if you are a member, you get the series that's $110. You get it for 75 or something. I don't remember. Again, I'm kind of using fake numbers because that was years ago. So can't quite remember exactly, but something like that. So we were thriving at this point. Like I had my memberships going. I had a solid, I would say probably 20 students on memberships, maybe 15 to 20. Had people dropping in. I was running series. The series always gave me like that little boost. For one, it was just fun and like something different and, whatever. Like you said, spicier. And then COVID hit. COVID hit and we didn't go back to ground zero, but we went back to like ground one. like, like we still had a couple like hanging on. So we started seeing, I mean, with obvious restrictions, we couldn't meet for a while. So we were doing online and that was okay. Like that was working for, I would say probably 8 to 10 weeks. I was able to still charge memberships. I was giving them a third class for their membership fee. It was just online. And then we were like, okay, well, let's meet at the park. And then eventually we got back in the studio. And by that time, I mean, a couple months into it, like my memberships dropped significantly for obvious reasons. Like people are now like not working or, the world's falling apart. And then I wasn't doing any series at that time, but I had grown my staple classes. And I had at that point one teacher that I was raising up to teach with me. So she was teaching one of the classes. I think we were at like maybe 5 classes a week between my private classes and my public classes. Around probably the spring of 2022, I'm like, this isn't working. Like I feel like we're kind of back at the drawing board. That I'm having these same thoughts of like, I'm not necessarily paying to have classes. Like I might be breaking even, but barely. So this isn't working. And the safe option is memberships. And if you've ever done I mean, like that's the obvious answer. Like memberships are the safe option because they're coming in on the first of every month, right? But that wasn't working because people were canceling and people weren't coming. Even the people who were paying weren't showing up. So I essentially kind of went back to the same drawing board that I went back to in 2017 and said, okay, what worked then and how can I implement that to work now? If I'm looking at pulling the plug on all of it, I might as well go out doing what I love. So I was a little more hopeful and optimistic about it this time because I had seen what God had done before and I knew that he would do it again. So I did. I pulled everything, every single thing. I pulled it and I said, here are the only times that you can, I say everything other than my men's private yoga class. they didn't budge. Even during COVID, they were like, we can meet at the Brahms. Where do you want to meet? Like they didn't care. Like they were just like, tell us where to meet and I'll meet. But I pulled the plug on everything and said, here's where you can take classes with me. And that's when I launched another hot yoga series. I found a new space that would allow for hot yoga because our old one that we were at wouldn't allow for it anymore. Just their systems were old and it was too hard on the system. So found a new space, got in there, started teaching, I think 2 hot yoga classes a week. That was it. And I waitlisted every single class. Like they were full. I had waitlists on all of them. I was down to teaching 2 times a week, away from like 8 to 10 times a week. And I still have my 2 private class mornings with my guys. But so I was like, okay, we're back to respond. Instead of being in that, like, it's really easy to get stuck, especially once you hit like membership mode. It's like, you kind of just get used to it. It kind of just becomes normal. And now I was kind of back to responding to the needs of people. What people needed was a closer connected community. They needed something to get them outside of what they were used to, or maybe back in the studio, like something to entice them to come back in. So I went from like barely hanging on to just thriving post pandemic. And so we pulled memberships and we went to series model only. So from here, I was teaching less, right? Because I'm now making more money. I'm now charging. I literally was like, this is what I'm going to teach. This is what I'm going to charge. Whoever can come, can come. And then, of course, we added a donation class for people who are like, I can't afford that. Like, great, we've got this class for you. Come and receive. Do what you can, do what you need to do. But because I was teaching less, I now had energy to pour into other leaders. And this was another just pivotal moment for my business. It just changed the trajectory of my business because I now was taking a step back and I was launching all these other teachers. So we had a couple new yoga teachers come in. And then we had a lady, Jen, if you're listening to this, she teaches dance and she had a little following that just needed some nurturing. So we brought her in. She was teaching dance classes and yoga. She also got yoga certified. And then we now have Lacey, who's teaching like a body weight boot camp. And so, like, we now are able to offer so much more because I decided to take that. Like, it was scary though, like, because I was like, it wasn't like I was like, I'm done, I quit. This isn't, it was more like, this isn't working. I need to find a way to make it work. Like, and so I just snatched the cord out of the wall and said, like, I'm telling you, like, that first month, it was June of 2022 was the first month. And all of those months before I was getting a check, so to speak, on the first of every month when all of my enrollments came in and my tuitions and my membership fees. I didn't get that this time. Like, it was scary not knowing, but looking back now, so that was 22 of June, so not quite 2 years ago. Like, we now are, everybody just has their rhythm. So they're teaching what they want. They're doing it in a series basis. We only do series. Like, so she teaches a 5-week boot camp or a 4-week dance fitness class or 3-part soul series, whatever each person wants to teach. And we're now able to not only connect with the one student in a broader spectrum, but we're able to connect with people who maybe don't want to do yoga, but they want to do boot camp. So we're able to bring in people that I couldn't bring in by myself. And that to me is like the ultimate flex, is when my team is doing what they love and they're thriving and bringing in people that would never come to my class or that would never come otherwise. Like, that's the ultimate flex for me as a leader, is seeing my teachers do what they love and reach and connect with other women and men. We have guys that come too, but and so that was just one of those other moments where it was like, I'm going to go left, I'm going to go right. What are we going to do? And so I'm now on again another season of just, I mean, and maybe we'll be doing another podcast in a couple of years, Nick, and I'm like, and then in 2025, but what I'm learning is I feel like this is kind of part of the process. This is kind of part of the growth process. Is you have to kind of learn, when is it time to pivot? When is it time to quit? Sometimes there is a time to quit. But I feel like when it's time to quit, you just know. Like, it's not like, I guess I'll quit because X, Y, and Z isn't working out. It's more like the grace for the season is gone. So when I left the salon, I feel like God showed me that it was essentially like there's no cartilage in the knee. Like, I can still walk, but it's going to be like bone on bone. The grace for the season at the salon was gone. So that's a whole different thing. But if quitting just because we're bored, because we're not making enough money, because we're unsure of what our next step is, or we don't have enough people in class, our purpose doesn't feel like it's moving through us, like, that's when it's time to ask the questions, like, not like, should I, but how can I? And then being ready to take those scary leaps. Like, it is scary. I want to validate this fear, but the more, because I had already experienced it and the faithfulness of God to see me through it the first time, I knew going into it this next time, like, I'm just jumping, and I'm going to trust God with the rest. And sitting here almost 2 years later, it does make me feel a little bit emotional to see how he not only rebuilt, but like increased. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't just like he restored what I had or what I was doing before, but he increased it. And it's such a testament to his faithfulness, and which requires faith from us for him to be faithful in that. So I wanted to share those two stories because they do feel different. Like, I had some of the same thoughts and some of the same things happening, but I felt different the second time around. Like, oh, I know what we're going to do. Even if I don't know if it's going to work or if this is what I actually should be doing, I know that God will be faithful regardless. And so that's what I learned through that.
There's so many things I want to highlight through all of that. First, you had just said that they were similar. You experienced similar feelings and thoughts, but they were different. And one thing I want to highlight there is that sometimes we think fear, like down the road, I won't be afraid. Just right now, like I'm struggling with this thing and I'm fearful, but like someday I won't be afraid and then I'll take action. No, that's not true. Fear will always pop its head back up. And we just did an episode on fear. So if you haven't listened to that, make sure you go listen to that because I think it'll be really helpful if you struggle with any sort of fear. But and we covered some of this stuff in that. But the fear doesn't really go away, it just kind of changes. And I think you get better at learning how to work with the fear amidst the fear and not using fear as an excuse to not move or to not do things. So I think that highlights that. And I remember that time because obviously, worked together on CDY and so we were already, in contact. But as you were describing your situation and where you were thinking of going and how afraid you were of pulling the trigger because of all the reasons that you just described, and just talking through that with you and trying to help you process it, um, ultimately you had to make that choice. I couldn't make it for you, and you did it, and you did it scared. And I remember that and just being so proud of you that you knew you needed to do this, and you did it. And
Yeah.
everything where you're at and what you have now is because of that moment.
And it just also kind of highlights like the power of having people to process with you and ask you hard questions and remind you. Cause when you're in it like fear feels like fear, whether it's 10 years ago that something happened that causes fear or it's today. And like fear in my body and in my mind feel the same. So to have someone remind you in those moments where it's like, hey, but do you remember when you made this decision and these things happen? And like just to kind of take you out of it for a second and say, but even if it doesn't work, then what? Like you go on and you do something. And we talked a lot about that in our fear episode, but that's the power of having people in your corner who you can process with, who know you well enough to ask like the hard questions and to challenge you on some thoughts and some things, and then also just like be a voice of reminder. I think the power of community really played for me in that because I remember those conversations too.
Yeah. Um, One thing I wanted you to touch on is for the person who's realizing this is them, it's time for a pivot. Maybe they know the pivot, maybe they don't yet, but let's assume they do, or they figured out, okay, this is where I'm going and it's time to pull the trigger. How do you communicate that as far as the timing? What do you say? What do you not say? And just like what would advice would you give to that teacher?
So I'll make sure I understand. Like if a teacher says, okay, I too need to remodel my systems essentially. Like, so I would like to go to the series model and away from membership because that sounds like something that might be a great next step for me. Um, so a couple things is I always lead with transparency and clarity when it comes to because even remember sending you the email that I was sending to my students, and you were like, "That sounds a little passive. Like, be more direct." And these people love you and know you. You can be direct. And so I remember saying, what we're doing is not working. The studio cannot continue the way it's going. Here's where we're going. And so just leading with clarity with your students and transparency and vulnerability, like to see the human side of them, like not like, well, guys, it's just not working out. But no, hey, because of the unforeseen events that we've all gone through, it's causing a lot of people to have to transition and pivot. So are we. And I hope that you'll take this ride with me. I hope you'll get on this bus and go where we're going. We're even being vulnerable or like transparent about like, I'm not even exactly sure where we're going. But what I know is this is what is going to happen next. And so giving your students a next step of, hey, I'm going to be teaching these classes now. You'll no longer be doing these things and just letting them know. So I would say communicate with them kindly, but very directly. Like don't leave people questioning and concisely. Like I remember writing out this whole long letter because I wanted to explain myself and I wanted to people to feel my passion behind what was happening. But then like there was so many things that you were like, you can take this out. Like you can explain this to them later. They either know you, love you, and trust you, or they don't. So like, and that's up to them if they're gonna follow or not. But just leading with clarity, with direction, with kindness. So that would be my first like if you're doing that. For me, that looked like sending out an email and then directly texting people to the link to that email of like, hey, I just want to make sure you saw this in your inbox. Here are some changes that you need to know about. So communication for sure. What was the other part of the question?
Well, I'll go there in a second. I just wanted to add
Okay.
on one thing that just to add on to how to communicate that would be, yeah, be direct, be clear. It's okay to be authentic and transparent. And even if it's a financial reason, like this just, financially, this just isn't working anymore. And in order to continue to offer these services and to bless you, whatever, like things need to change. And the caveat here is I want you to be really careful with the way that you word things to not be about you, because if we're honest, no one really
Yeah,
cares. Like,
it's
they
true.
care, but they don't, like, they wanna know how does this affect them. So try to write from that point of view that this is not working, and it's not working for them, or
Right.
else you wouldn't be having this conversation. So to say this isn't working and for, whatever reason, and here's where we're headed, and here's how this benefits you. So, like, kinda leave that at the end of, like, we're making this change not because of me and what I wanna do. I'm actually making this change so that I can better serve you. And so when you can kind of paint it in that perspective, they're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense." Even if they're a little upset, you're gonna hurt feelings. Like people are, you're gonna cut classes they enjoy. You're probably cutting a lot of classes no one cares about because that's part of the problem. But just to paint the picture of how it helps them and how it benefits them, that helps ease the blow a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's good. You will disappoint some people, and that's just the matter of the fact. Like, and that's really hard, but you're also, like you said, you're going to be better equipped to serve them better. You know what I mean? So, like, yes, you'll lose some clients, and yes, you'll disappoint some people, and you're going to be a better leader because of this, and a better servant because of this. So it kind of just comes with it. So just prepare yourself for it.
Yep. So that the follow-up question was, so how do you communicate that? And then just like the timing of it. Like how long do you give them notice? Like what are some of like the logistics of when to pull the trigger?
So for me, timing wise, I would say even when I was a hairstylist and I was increasing rates or changing hours, I always tried to do things on the quarter. So it gave people time to see it, get used to it, be ready for it. Like, hey, we're moving to this system. This is where you'll book. This is, whatever it is. But in this instant, like I knew so strongly that this was the way that we're supposed to pivot, even though I didn't know all of the things to follow. Like I didn't know everything. I didn't all I knew was that it was time to make that like 180 and just be like, boom, we're going this way. So for me, I always try to do it on the first of the next quarter. So effective April 1st or effective July 1st. And that way you have time to speak with them, in classes. I think you could do it in a shorter amount of time, but you definitely want to give people, I would say, a solid 2 to 4 weeks. Especially for yoga, if they're coming regularly, like hair clients, I didn't see them, maybe 6 to 8 weeks. So I needed a little more time. So I would say the beginning of the month is always what's worked for me. So with this one, it was in May that I made the decision and I just ripped the Band-Aid off and said, effective June 1st, we will no longer have memberships. We will no longer have these experiences. And you can get plugged in over here at this different studio space. Here's the rates and prices for that. And I just did it. And they just came along. And some of them didn't. Some of them didn't come along. And I still haven't seen them since. So I think having like a marker for me, the first of the month or the first of the quarter is always a good one. And that way you have time to give them time to process it and get ready for it. Cause they'll still be like, wait, I didn't know. It's like, I've texted you, I've called you, I've sent it to your mail. Like they'll still not know. Like they need all the reminders.
Remember, you replied to this message.
See,
uh,
you hearted it right here.
to add to that, I would say let the severity of your condition dictate how much time you give them. If you're about to have a nervous breakdown and lose your mind, don't wait a quarter. Do it soon. Give them a couple weeks. But if things are just like, yeah, I'm okay. Like I can manage another couple months. So just let the severity of what you're feeling dictate how soon to do it. Because if you're
Yep.
about to collapse, you're doing no one a favor by extending that longer. So don't draw it out if you're about to freak out.
Well, and I think that that is a red flag, like you were talking about earlier, just kind of like little red flags or indicators. I think burnout is one of them. If you're feeling burnout, I, in my own theology brain of myself, do not feel that, I do feel like that the work that God calls us to do does require sacrifice. It does require obedience, blind obedience sometimes. Hello. It does require, dying to ourselves. But I truly don't believe that God will call us to sacrifice ourselves, our souls on the altar of ministry or business or our families. Like if our family is not, like for me, work is way, way after my family. So that's a red flag for me. If I'm like completely burnout all the time, I'm not looking forward to teaching. I'm not looking forward to creating things. I'm a grouch at my house. Like I'm just unfulfilled, feeling like that's a red flag for me to know that I am nearing burnout. And I know this can look different for different people and different seasons, but I don't believe that God calls us to sacrifice ourselves on the altar of business or ministry. I just don't. I think that's where self-discipline comes in. Like it takes discipline. I don't know if y'all have ever tried. I'm a high producer. Nick, you're a high producer. You're a way higher producer than I am, but I don't know if you've ever tried to like Sabbath fully. Like that takes more discipline than me staying up late to finish work or not coming home when I said I was going to, or like there has to be those disciplines in place to keep us from that place of burnout. But that is a red flag that something's not working. Like this isn't like we're not burning out for in the name of Jesus. I just don't think that that's how it works. And I think that we have to keep ourselves protected with those disciplines like Sabbath and rest and play and community and all of those things that are not work.
One other thing that really stuck out to me as I hear you talk and share your story is your ability to develop other teachers. And many of the teachers that we've talked to that are feeling kind of stuck or not really sure what to do next, a lot of times they're tired because they're teaching too much. And they're at this point where they need they need to make more money. So part of it is we help them raise their rates to charge like what they're worth. But also it might be time to have other people help share the load. And you're just really gifted in this. And I think a lot of people the people that we've talked to are like, well, I don't have anyone like that. I don't have anyone who's already certified in my small town or, whatever. I don't know anyone. You did not either. you you developed these people to get in there. So I think honestly, this could probably be another episode. So we probably need to do an episode on developing other leaders in your practice. But if you could just give a quick rundown of like, just touch on that topic for a second.
Yeah. So I don't. I believe that we have our strengths and we have our weaknesses. And I think the more aware that we are and the more that we allow the Holy Spirit to convict us in these ways, like I think that we need to be strengthening our strengths always, aware of our weaknesses. But that's where I start to delegate. I look and say, these are the things I'm not strong in. Who is? Now, something on bringing in new teachers. My pastor, who he actually has a leadership podcast that's incredible. I've learned so much, but he says we don't find good leaders, we develop good leaders. And that has always stuck with me because we find people who are passionate because I cannot teach you to be passionate. It doesn't matter how good I am at anything. I cannot teach you to have this like fire inside of you. But I find people with that fire inside of them and I help them identify what lights that fire, what fans that flame, and then I give them a space to go. And so that for me, that has looked like getting people excited about getting, certified in what they want to teach. Like, so we've got, like I said, girls that teach yoga, we've got girls that teach boot camp, we've got girls that teach dance, Pilates. And so what is it that you love? And so getting them certified to do that. And then it's not like an official like mentorship program, but I do have like some steps. And again, maybe this is a great idea for a next episode, but like some steps for the training situation. Like I've paid to get people certified in things and then they work it off. So like they'll teach X amount of classes and I will front the money for their training, depending on what it is. That may be an option. And then I also have, they'll get trained and certified, and then they'll teach X amount of free classes, which is a gift to our students. And just to get reps, and then we debrief after. They teach a class, we debrief. They teach another class, and then they get a series It's a free series, 3 to 4 part series, right? And I'm paying to develop this person because I'm paying for the rent and my time and all of that. But I know that if I'll invest in them now, that I'll then be sitting where I'm at today, and they're just thriving and feeling empowered with what they're doing. And so then they get their series, then eventually they get paid. Like they can do a paid series or paid classes or however that looks. And it's a little bit different for each teacher depending on what they teach. But I think just remembering that, like, we don't just find good leaders, we develop good leaders. I think the best leaders develop more leaders. To me, and then the second thing I think I would leave you with is relinquish control. If someone can do it 60 to 75% better than you, let them, and then continue to be okay with having those follow-up conversations, right? So like, when I gave my social media away, Jess, I'm sure she might be listening to this, and hopefully we'll have her on the podcast someday. But Jess works, anything you see, well, not anything, but a lot of the things you see for CDY or for my studio stuff, even some of Nick's Glacier Rock Media things, Jess's fingerprints are on that. And that started with me just needing to let go of this. I was like, hey, can you make 1 to 2 posts a week for me? Just to help me out. And through that, she realized she got really good at it. And so we worked together to kind of develop that. And now she gets to do that for other businesses as a means of income and something she loves doing that she can do on her own time. But she didn't start there. I didn't go to her because she was great at graphics. Like I went to her because I was training her, kind of developing her as a leader and a yoga teacher and all of that. And this was just one of those things I could give away, even though like it wasn't as good as she is today. She's phenomenal today. She was better than I could do because what I was doing was nothing. So I had to take, kind of that step back and let her learn. So relinquishing control, like setting the parameters, having lots of conversations, but relinquishing that control, I think would be my 2 thoughts for somebody wanting to build a team.
So I got one thought for that, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
That if you're interested in this line of thought, there's a book that's amazing called "Buy Back Your Time" by Dan Martell, and I'll link to it in the show notes if you want to pick that up. But it's a phenomenal book, and it's helped me in a lot of ways because I am that struggling perfectionist that it's hard to let go of things. And what he says in the book is 80% done. So like you were saying, he kind of uses that 80% mark of like, if someone can do it 80% as good as you, 80% done by someone else is 100% freaking awesome. So do that. And some of that stuff is like, it's good enough, let it go. And sometimes that means you do the next 20%. So like in my video business, I've got a guy helping me with some things, and there's some of it that he gets it to that 80 and I take it to the 100. And then there's some of it that like the 80 is good enough to go, and it just goes. And it's up to me to develop him to get that percentage up. But check out that book. It's super helpful if you're looking to build a team, even if it's just a team of 2. Like that is still a team. And it's amazing what can happen when you buy back a little bit more of your time.
Yeah, let us know in the comments if you guys want us to do an episode on building teams, because that is something that I get a lot of questions about. Like, how did you find this person? I'm like, I didn't just find a good, awesome yoga teacher, an awesome marketing strategist. We worked together to develop. So,
yeah.
Awesome. Well, I hope that this was helpful for some of you guys that are kind of finding yourself in that situation, or for when you do find yourself in that situation. And I think we should, as leaders. I hope you feel encouraged. I hope you feel empowered to take your next steps. As always, we love hearing from you guys. Make sure that you are letting your friends know about this podcast by sharing it. Subscribe. We've got some good stuff coming down the pipeline. Nick, do you have anything else to say before we get out of here?
Yeah, I just want to say she touched on series, and I think we probably should do an episode on series to go a little bit more in depth on like why and all the benefits that come with that. But if you're sold on it already, you're like, I need to do series. We actually have a workshop that you can buy that teaches you exactly how to do it, how to plan them, how to come up with it, how to pack it out, and just how to do them successfully. So if that's something you're interested in, go to christiansdoyoga.com/series, and it's going to take you to the page where you can find out more info about that. And because you're a podcast listener, I want to give you a discount. So put in the code JCY and it'll give you a discount off the full price. So friend, I hope you found that helpful. And if you did, would you like and share and subscribe? Make sure you don't miss any of our future episodes. And if you missed that episode on fear, Once you go ahead and click this link right here, it'll take you to that episode so it can help you get over your fear. Thank you so much for tuning in with us, and we will catch you on the next one.